Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Hit it. I saw you were with them last night. I saw you were with them last night. Don't burn the bridge, burn the paper.
Yeah, that's Don't Burn the Bridge, Burn the Paper by Engaging Time, coming to a venue near you. We will be at the Fairmont Shores Restaurant and Tiki Bar in Fox Lake Villa area on August 11th. Come out and see me. Hopefully they have a good time, and that will be one of the songs we are showing. Sean, I got to tell you, I had a dream. Maybe it was in my... maybe it's a fantasy. I don't know. I went to AGT. I applied for AGT. I haven't done it yet. I'm thinking on it. And I debuted that song as that was my song for my introduction. And the crowd goes crazy. And then what's his name? The comedian. He looks
Howie
at
Mandel?
Yeah, Howie Mandel looks at me and he says, "That's a great song and that's a hit, and you're a hit." So, but in order for me to get there, my friend, my stage presence better be a lot better than what it was last Sunday. That's all I know. So, anyway, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Insurance Corner. My name is Bill Miksch. I'm president of WDMA Financial Group in Grayslake, Illinois. And that is Sean Hauser, somewhere in the bunkers in Columbus, Ohio. Sean, welcome back. Appreciate you being here as usual.
Glad to be in the co-pilot seat.
Absolutely. I'm the mouthpiece. He's the brains, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I look at it. So the next one is variable. Now, variable whole life or variable universal life is a very technical, very specific kind of a product that is meant for a particular type of customer. And let me explain the customer or client. They're already maxing out on their 401k and or their profit sharing plan, and they're making a lot of money, and they need more than what is being put in because of the amount of money they make every year. So these kinds of policies, and I would say that index, universal life, and variable kind of fall into the same place here. You can do what's called an overfunding of a life insurance policy. Now, let me put this in perspective. I'm going to tease you a little bit more about this 401k life insurance thing. With 401k, Sean, are there limits to how much money you can put in every year?
Yeah, this year I think it's $23,000, and then if you're over the age of 50, I want to say it's another $7,500.
That's about right.
Yep. It's like $30,500, something like that.
And that's what you can put in, not including the match, correct?
That is correct. That's
right.
What you defer out of your paycheck.
Right. So, and then let's say the match is 4% just to keep the math simple. But then if you're making $250,000, you're going to be part of that what's called a top-heavy crowd. And if you're not doing the kind of 401ks that basically eliminate that top-heavy discrimination stuff that you have to go through, you may not be able to put away your $30,000. I know of a client that I had, this is 15 years ago. He was told by the vendor that he could max out. Now, he wasn't matching anything, but he maxed out. And when the testing got done at the end of the year, and it was determined that he overfunded it by $15,000, he had to give it all back. And keep in mind, he had just done his taxes. So not only did it cost him money in terms of taking the money out, but it also cost him because he had to redo his taxes. And he was livid. And I don't blame him, because he got really bad advice. And unfortunately, I think now, I think the climate for the people that are spending time in that 401k space are much more careful. At least I hope they are. But for people that are maxing out their 401k and or their profit sharing, and they still want more because of where their income is, these variable whole life policies allow you to participate in the market. Now, index universal life, if the market goes down, what did I say about the indexes, Sean? If the market goes down, do you lose money or everything's okay? Do you remember?
If they
indexed.
You may not earn anything, but you won't lose your principal.
Exactly right. Whatever is in the account at the time that it gets revisited at the anniversary of the policy, we have a saying, zero is your hero. You didn't lose anything. You're good to go. In a variable, you are absolutely in the market, absolutely exposed. So if the market does a meltdown like it did in 2008, you were sitting on $250,000, a couple things were likely to have occurred. Keep in mind a variable policy, now I'm talking universal life for the moment, variable universal life, which is tied to real indexes like the real S&P 500 or some other mutual fund or class or family of funds that are in there, you are absolutely exposed. If you had $250,000 of cash value on $1 million policy, let's say, and 2008 reared its ugly head, you probably lost half of your value at that time, first. Second, if it wasn't, even though it was overfunded, it may very well be that the cost of insurance it's likely the cost of insurance is going to be much higher, and it could put that policy in jeopardy of not necessarily exploding, but having somebody like me come back and say, hey, Sean, we're going to have to add $5,000 to the policy. That literally is the kind of discussion you have to have with those kind of policies to shore up the plan. And again, if I were your advisor and I came to you and you didn't actually understand the moving parts, how would you feel about that?
I'd be a little upset.
And rightfully so. So, full disclosure, I'm not securities licensed, so I don't sell these products. In my career, I sold one, and it was to a high-end person who understood it. I could not, in good conscience, sell these policies to somebody who didn't understand the moving parts. And to me, this is just me, these are meant for higher caliber, high net worth individuals that have the capability of putting extra money away and understanding the money's exposed if the market takes a crap on you. Now, there's also variable whole life. Now, remember, you're still in the indexes, but now this is priced higher because the whole idea behind whole life is that premium has to be sustainable forever. So you're still exposed, but now the premium is much higher. It's not a flexible premium like you have with universal life. It's a fixed policy. Is there still a chance there could be a call on that policy if the market takes a dump? Yep, could happen. If the market downturn is severe enough, but because it's based in a whole life chassis, the likelihood of that is not very likely. So variable whole life is really meant for high net worth individuals, not the average person. And I would tell you these are products really meant for anybody making $250,000 or more, because they should have, or they do have the cash flow to manage that. There's two more types of permanent policies before we get into the actual moving parts. Graded whole life. Now, this is kind of a blend, like a whole life blend, but it doesn't get sold very often, but I've been seeing internet things from vendors lately saying graded whole life is a thing, premiums are cheaper, which they are. It might be easier to get into because they're cheaper, which that's not a lie. That would be the case. But I'm going to go back to my core, Sean. When I sell life insurance, or I can only speak for myself. When I sell life insurance, and I was going to sit down with you and Kelly, I'd want to find out how much you both need before we pick the type. Because I want to know if something happens to you, what does Kelly need? Income, house, debts, whatever you have. If you've got kids, is education covered? are there other things in your life that you want to make sure happens if something happens to you? Because the Almighty is not going to give you a mulligan to say, oh, Sean, I know you forgot to do that thing. I'm going to kick you back. Most people don't get that privilege. So the key for me is to make sure you have the right amount. Then, and only then, do we start to figure out what kind. Is it term? Is it permanent, whole life? Is it variable? Are you a player to be in that variable space or that index universal life space where you want to overfund something? Or do you need a blend of it where it's mostly term because I need the death benefit to make sure my spouse or my kids are taken care of, and I've got a small permanent policy over here, so when the term runs out, I still got something for my family, if no other reason, to put me in the ground. So graded whole life kind of addresses that because it's kind of a blend, but it's an option. I don't see it used very often. Full disclosure, I have not quoted a graded whole life policy, so I'm kind of curious what it looks like. I may have an illustration run just for kicks and giggles, but my instincts are that the likelihood is that might not be a good answer, might be an okay answer for some people, but the jury's out on that one, at least for me. And the last one is single premium life insurance policies. Now, this gets into more estate planning or long-term care planning. And a lot of single premiums stuff that I see is really in those two areas. So as an example, if you're going to be buying a long-term care policy and you don't want to buy one that is in the traditional sense of long-term care where there's no life insurance, you buy a single premium policy, so $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 of premium, and I'm not exaggerating that number. That's the number that we typically see for people 55 and older. And then that policy says, okay, Sean, you and Kelly have bought this thing for $100,000. This is how the long-term policy works. If you die before you use it, there's a life insurance policy that will be paid to your beneficiaries. If you use the policy, the life insurance is going to be a part of that long-term care policy. And then there's another provision where there's pure long-term care built into it. So the idea behind this is to drop a single premium into a life insurance policy and use it as a long-term care vehicle. And these are called hybrid long-term care policies. The other one is a simply for estate planning purposes. I have a $20 million estate. Even though I've done my due diligence, I'm still going to be subject to, I'm just going to use round numbers, I've still got a $5 million estate tax. And I don't want my estate to be ripped apart. So I'm going to go see Bill, and I'm going to ask him to get me a $5 million single premium policy. And I'm 60 years old, and I'm in pretty good health, but I've got diabetes. And I'm just type 2, and it's controlled, and I'm not on insulin, I'm just on metformin, it's all good. I say, okay, Sean, let's say you're the client, it's going to cost you $300,000 one time, and you're done. You are done. And you're like, okay, I can do that. Here's a check for $300,000. Now we put that policy, technically speaking, the trust should be buying the policy in that case, not you individually. There's reasons for that. I won't get into that now. But you buy the policy. The policy is set. When you pass away, that $5 million policy is outside of your estate if it was put together correctly. And now that $5 million drops into the trust, and it's there for the heirs to pay the estate taxes to the extent there's going to be any. And then the estate stays together. They don't have to liquidate anything. And so you've got whole life, blended whole life, universal life, indexed universal life, variable universal and variable whole life, graded whole life, and single premium. And typically the single premiums are universal life or indexed universal life chassis, but it's built so you don't have to pay a premium after the first drop. Those are the fundamental pieces of permanent life insurance. So I've got about 7 minutes left, Sean, before I get into what a whole life policy does, because that's the next piece here. Any questions about the moving parts?
No, I just wondered that with a single premium insurance that, like you said, you put in X numbers now based on your, what do they call those things? Annuity tables, and that's not the right word, but life expectancy tables.
Right.
So if I'm 54 and I wanted to buy this policy and I said I want $1 million, you go to the life expectancy table and say, okay, we figure you're going to live for another 65, 70 years. I wish. And then, so in other words, and when you pass away to have $1 million, you got to put in, like you said, $300,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it, right?
Yes.
So
correct.
if the market tanks, that's on the insurance company.
As long as it's not variable, yes. If it's a universal life or index universal or whole life, you don't have to worry about what the market's doing.
Okay.
Yep. And it's definitely there. This is, again, a higher net worth individual person. This is definitely somebody who's more sophisticated. Certainly is going to have a lot more questions because they didn't get rich by being stupid. And then they probably bring it back to their accountant, which, in my humble opinion, is not always the best idea because accountants and life insurance people don't like each other. Or worse, the investment guy. Oh, well, if we put this thing in over here, then you're protected. Well, it's still market risk, right? Dancing around. They don't want to lose the assets under management. So, and if they could have done the life insurance, they should have said something, because a lot of those guys that are in the brokerage area that do assets under management probably have an insurance license too, but their whole goal is to get as much money under their wings so that they can, take their 4 or 6 week or 8 week vacations and still get paid a pretty handsome sum. I'm not beating them up. That's just how it works. If you got a $50 million portfolio underneath you and you're getting 1%, you're making $500,000 every year just by waking up. That's a good deal. It took a while to do that, I'm sure, and it's hard work, absolutely. But some of those guys miss the boat when they forget about talking about the insurance related, or worse, they forget about talking about what happens at retirement with Medicare and all this other stuff. So I don't want to digress too much, but single premium definitely has a play. Now, 5 minutes left in the ball game here. I'm going to get into whole life specifically, and I kind of touched on it before, but whole life is typically sold by mutual companies, not a stockholder company. So I'm just going to use this as an example. Prudential is a stock company, so they may have a whole life product, but they're beholden to their stockholders. A mutual company, like Guardian, Northwestern, New York Life, those kind of companies, those are mutual companies. The policyholder in those companies are per se stockholders in those corporations. So when there's a profit, a dividend is kicked off from what the profits were from that company, and a portion of those dividends are then swept across all the policies that are owned by the policyholders, and that goes into those policies. The dividend then increases the cash value, possibly buys more life insurance. It's called a paid-up addition, where they're buying more insurance and you're adding cash value. And every year the profitability goes up. Why? Because the price of a whole life policy is substantially higher than universal life or index universal life. It's not profitable per se, but they've kind of turned their cheek to the cost of insurance and go, we want this thing to start humming as soon as possible. We don't want to wait. And in the perfect world, a whole life policy somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12, 13 years should be break even. If you're overfunding it, then it should be break even around the 8th year, which means the amount of money you put in and the cash value should be almost parallel with each other. Should be spot on, not to the penny, but pretty darn close. And then after that, watch that sucker just start to kick off. Once you get past that break even, but the dividends rue the day, push the envelope in those policies, and that's what make these things very profitable. And the insurance companies that are behind them, the mutual companies, they're old, they're big, they know what they're doing, and I don't have any skin in one of the games. There's one company I can't sell because you have to be an agent. I won't say who that is, but the rest of them are free game for any agent that are out there for the most part. And as I said, these things buy more life insurance. If they're structured that way, they absolutely will increase the cash value. The cash grows tax deferred. That's a big deal. And we got a minute left, Sean. I'm going to leave the teaser here. This is a big problem with the government because there's billions of dollars of cash value in these life insurance policies all over the world, let alone in the United States. Take a guess if you think Congress owns a lot of these things. And why do you think they've not lost their tax deferral status? They don't want to lose the goose that's cooking the golden egg. So these things grow tax deferred, and I want you to keep that in the back of your mind because that word is going to be used again when I talk about that overfunded life insurance policy that could potentially beat out a 401k. We're coming to the end of the rainbow here, Sean. As usual, I appreciate you being with me. He's the brains. I'm just the mouthpiece. My name is Bill Miksch. That's Sean Hauser. This is your Insurance Corner at WLCB 101.5 FM. We might see you next week. We might not. Stay tuned to your emails. We'll see you later. Have a great night, everybody.